Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Mangum Talk Star Wars. I'm your host, Lee. Here I'm joined by my co-host, like I am every week. Jamie, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you today?
I'm doing wonderful. And that's right, we have a third host this week. We've got him finally to let us know what he thinks about the Acolyte. Spencer, how are you?
I feel very disappointed at the accoutrements that I got in terms of being invited to this show. There were brown M&Ms in my trailer. The temperature was set to 68 rather than 69, and the thread count on the bed was entirely insufficient. A poor start on y'all's part to get me in the mood for podcast recording.
Sir, there's no pyrotechnics here, so we don't have to read your things very carefully. Come on.
And it's that kind of philosophy that extends to your podcast performance.
Look, I have never once. I prepped for this episode more than last time. Last time I said I've never prepped for an episode. I prepped for this episode.
My God, you read things.
I did.
We all prepped for it because we recorded an episode about episode 5 of the Acolyte, which you are not listening to now. You're listening to a different one. Why? Because that recording got lost to time. It was probably the best podcast we've ever done. It probably would have revolutionized the Star Wars franchise. Fairly certain it would have vaulted the three of us into very high senior executive positions at Lucasfilm. However, it's lost to time, so this is what you get.
Spencer actually admitted that he loved everything and everyone. He wept with joy, but then by the end, he changed his mind back to normal again. So sorry, you missed out on all that.
I realized I was expressing those thoughts out loud and the universe might suffer for them. So yes, I suppressed them once I caught myself.
That's what broke the recording, is that the universe was folding in on itself.
Joy?
Out of you? Wow.
Not allowed. So we are going to review episode 5 of The Acolyte Night, which Jamie predicted on the last podcast.
Boom!
That
I
the
don't
episode
predict anything right. I got this one.
We also figured out this week that the night episode is the same exact length as the day episode. So it does seem like they just split the thing in half. They filmed one episode. It's too long. They split it in half. So that's what we got. Let's go to Spencer first. Spencer, what did you think of the episode?
I thought it was the best episode of a show I don't like. Of where maybe about the first 10, 12 minutes of this episode, I was actually enjoying it. I thought some of the dialogue was working better than it had previously. The acting was more on point. I was getting some honest emotions out of the characters rather than feeling like I was watching a high school drama production of Star Wars. The action was actually decent, and the filmmaking with respect to it made sense. We were still getting characters unnecessarily falling over at every opportunity, because that seems to be the main thing that May and Osha does in every scene she's a part of. We were still getting every single fisheye cutaway we possibly could in terms of swoops and swishes at every opportunity, as if it almost reaching Star Wars parody levels. But I was liking it. We can go into the details exactly of why. And then
all that being said.
And then after about minute 10, 12, so maybe about halfway through the episode in terms of what the actual length was rather than the stated length, because dear God, does this show have like 8 minutes of credits at the end of it and 2 minutes of recap at the start. It started to fall off for me, of where the action died away. Most of the characters I actually found interesting were dead, because basically my interest in the episode kind of died with Jackie, which that may hold true for the show going forward, but we'll see. And then it really fell back into a lot of the problems I've had with the series previously. The dialogue is just not great, and the acting is hurt by it. And focusing in on that, it ended on a point of where it could be interesting going forward, but getting there for the back half of the episode was just reminding me of what I disliked coming into it.
So Spencer, I would love to hear more details on your thoughts on two things here. One, the thing that I was saying we need Spencer here for is just any and all lore implications of like the Legends canon of the show so far, because I've been trying to pretend like I know that stuff, and I really don't, and I've gotten stuff very wrong already. And I'd also love to hear more about your thoughts on the first 4 episodes also. You said you kind of didn't like it. You kind of touched on that. I have seen a bunch of people online saying, this show is terrible, but this is the least terrible of them. And it's often, some people are saying that with intense criticism that you can follow, and some are saying it with some intellectually dishonest, ratings bombing. So I'd love for you to elaborate. Which of those camps are you? The good people or the terrible people? Which are you?
Well, I'm a terrible person, as I've documented every prior podcast I've been in. So that may inform some people going in. But honestly, I've not hated the show. I don't think it's terrible. It's mediocre. It very much feels like someone gave a college drama team a whole lot of money. They spent 90% of it on catering, and then they filmed the show. I don't know where the money's going on this show. There's sound stages and not great special effects at every available opportunity. Yeah. But first two episodes, I was interested enough in some of the aspects of the mystery and the overall thematic direction the show is going to go in. A lot of it looked better on paper, or read better on paper in my mind than it did on the screen, which has continued on throughout much of the show. But I was at least interested enough to continue, even if I didn't like the pieces, how they were coming together. Episode 3 was just kind of weird, of where I got where they wanted to go in terms of making a Rashomon kind of, different perspectives. We'll eventually put them together so it'll make sense. But it highlighted again just how a lot of the building blocks of this show were just bad or coarse or don't really come together very well and don't make for a lot of fun to watch. Then came episode 4, and that was the worst episode of the show so far. And the fact that it was the front half of what they said was going to be the best episode gave me very little hope of where this is your lead in. There may be some climactic moments, but I'm not going into this with the best hope that this is going to be a great production with respect to this. So episode 5 helped that compared to what's been I described it as mediocre. I don't have much in the way of passion about it. It's not really enthralled me, and it hasn't given me much to want to continue on with it. And some of the biggest problems in that regard have been the characters, which are not very well conceptualized, and I feel like the ones that were best conceptualized are now dead. And we're reaching their most interesting moments in this episode around the time of their deaths. And to explain one reference I made, Rashomon is a famous Japanese film of where it's all being told after the fact of going through various accounts like a trial of various people from their perspectives on what happened on that day. And with only one perspective, each one being incomplete and each one being biased or flawed, you don't get the complete picture until the narrative eventually walks us through what everyone saw. And so that kind of forced perspective storytelling has been called Rashomon style going forward.
Are you sure that's not the style where they take two pots and they use gold inlay to connect them to each other?
Oh, what's that called again? It's another Japanese word that we've said before.
Terry, that's sounds similar to the complaints you've had of just you barely want to keep watching the show. Do you feel the same way Spencer does, or different, or tell us that?
So good question. I've not spoken enough on the podcast about the issues with the production, like of it feeling small, closed in, not understanding the budget numbers. I mean, I look, the only reason I'm making a big deal of the budget is because Disney made a big deal of the budget when they announced Acolyte.
180 million.
Yeah, they press release 180 million. This is the most we spent on any of these shows. Expect, the world, right? Expect it to look like Star Wars, like expansive, and for that to be represented on screen, it hasn't been. So I'm also similarly confused about the budget, and I probably haven't mentioned that enough. Yeah, I think this episode, it's going to sound strange because everybody is telling me, oh yeah, this was like kind of my favorite episode so far. But this one kind of solidified for me that I would be done with it, because the excitement stemmed from lightsaber fights, not from, for me, anything they were doing to make the story interesting. Like, we've had four episodes to set up action. We got action, and you just heard Spencer say that he was immediately less interested as soon as the action was over. It tells me they're not telling a very good story. I'm not interested in these characters. I wasn't that interested when any of the million deaths happened. If you do like this show, then keep liking it. Then tell me I'm wrong, or don't talk to me at all. Don't care what I think, and keep enjoying it, because the ratings on this thing are not bad. The viewership numbers from Disney's perspective is not bad. It's very much in line with what they've had with other Star Wars media. So for all the review bombing that's happening, all the people like me sitting here saying that they don't like it, there is an audience that likes it and is enjoying it. I hope they continue to like and enjoy it. I think if I can boil down what has made this a show that I'm less interested in, it's that I've never been hooked on the characters. I never fell in love with the characters or cared about their plight. So when you do things like this episode where you start taking some off the board in these big dramatic moments, I care less. There hasn't been enough character development that has landed for me. So that's been a primary issue. And I would definitely, now I can say with certainty, I would quit watching if it wasn't for the podcast.
Yeah, and on that point, a character that had not worked with me previously, Yord, of where he's just been so wooden and so one note and not had much that's really invested in him, other than that he's meant to be a meathead. He's basically the dumb jock of Star Wars. That's been kind of his role, and everyone's there to point out to him what should be apparent like a hand in front of his face. This was his best episode. Like when he's running away and he's trying to get May. I always confuse which one's May and which one's Osha. He's trying to get, which one's he trying to get out of there?
May bad, Osha good.
Trying to get Osha out of there. They switch later in this episode, so that's gonna be a problem even more from me going forward.
Called it. This guy.
Yeah,
gonna switch.
Certainly did.
I mean,
on podcast.
I mean, it's you know.
This isn't on a show to feel that much pride that you saw it coming. Like the reveal of the reveal of the Sith. If anyone didn't see coming that the idea that the only other actor that she's ever with is going to be the Sith Master, I'm happy for you. World must be just a never-ending series of surprises and remarkable events.
Spencer, are you saying it's Law and Order's levels of suspense where, oh, look, Ben Affleck is in this episode of Law and Order. He's the killer. I know it already. He's the killer because he's the only famous person on the show.
I would love to watch that episode of Law and Order with somebody that legitimately thinks that Ben Affleck's going to be cop number 2, and that's the only thing he's going in there. Like they act like for South Park when they got George Clooney to be the gay dog, and that's actually the only thing they got George Clooney in. Whether Law and Order did that or whether this show did that, this is
Mars
not
attacks,
that show.
Mars attacks. Yeah, we got Michael J. Fox. What's he gonna do? Die in minute?
Die in the scene.
Does he
First
come
scene
back?
he's in.
No.
Again, I saw so many people say in like episode 4 because I've been trying to read the fan commentary because it's been interesting. It was like, well, there's no way the Sith Master can be that dude. Did you remember the name of that dude? The guy.
Jason Mendoza.
That's the name of the actor.
Florida.
What's the name of the character?
Jason Mendoza from Jacksonville, Florida. It's his best
Exactly. Some people were saying it can't be him. It'd be too obvious. And I'm looking at that going, guys, this ain't that show. Nope, not meaning that much shade behind that, but this ain't that show.
So my wife called that as her big guess, but she called it like in the first episode that had the apothecary. I feel like that was insightful. The last episode, I was like, okay, they're clearly suggesting it. It still might not be. I feel now it would almost be a surprise if it's not. If okay, the bad guy's here and he just released apothecary Jason, but no, it makes sense that it would be him at that point, especially because last episode he was dumb and smart and in weird ways that were clearly cleverly manipulative, in ways that didn't seem organic and natural and sincere. So that was my biggest tell more than anything else. More even than him disappearing was nobody's that smart and that dumb at the same time.
He'd be entirely extraneous if it wasn't him. Like it actually has to be him from how they've narratively written that character. It would be odder if it wasn't him at this point.
Are you saying Star Wars never has extraneous characters? Or even are you saying some of those extraneous characters aren't just awesome? Because there's plenty of awesome extraneous characters that I can't name right now, but I'm sure if you give me a minute, I'll come up with some.
Basil is so friggin' extraneous. They could have had it. My God, we've seen before in Star Wars, they've got trackers that will follow starships across hyperdrive jumps to different solar systems and sectors.
Yep.
Why do they need this weird weasel to wander around the jungle to smell a Wookiee?
Well, they clearly have not invented tiny little objects. I'm going to call them a fob with a little blinking light and little wires at the top. And let a person who is hunting a bounty, I don't think there's a word for that kind of career yet, to find somebody across the planet.
In fairness,
come on, what do you think this is?
In fairness, those incredibly unexplained magical objects apparently only work if there's a bounty. And as far as we know, they didn't bribe a magistrate to get a bounty on a Wookiee Jedi, who is such a wasted opportunity in terms of that character, by the way.
Jedi.
He's the Michael J. Fox of this. He's introduced to die.
So we know the answer. We know why.
That's that part I hate. It was the best fan service. A Wookiee Jedi who just seemed interesting. Like that's the kind of fan service that works for me. I was happy. If it was pandering, I don't care. But then they refused to actually fan service me, and I've been I'm blue fan serviced.
Well, return to the comments on Yord and Jackie here in a second. Lee, I want to hear what you're about to say there about why they included the adorable little creature the way Star Wars always includes the adorable little creature.
Well, they showed us. They showed, not tell, is that if you do you have Basil look for the scent, then he can problem solve as he goes if he runs into something else. If something sideways happens, if there's a different story to tell, like it's not a computer program that's just looking for one particular thing. So Basil runs into other trouble. He squeals. He alerts our heroes. So it's a better option.
His problem solving, his special tactic when there's a strange situation is scream. I feel like we made alarms that can scream.
But the decision on what to scream about is important. He can make that call. He can make that call. It's way better than just some Roomba.
His alert dar is like a dog walking your dog, and it barks at every single object that's near.
No, because you didn't hear him yell.
It's not prioritizing.
You didn't hear him yell at anything else, like the whole episode. He wasn't yelling at everything. You didn't hear 20 Basil yells. You heard it when he saw the bad guy. So Basil's got a pretty good filter there.
So when you see the good guy, when you see the bad guy, when you smell a thing, when you follow a trail, when you get surprised, when you're confused.
Yeah, and also
not when you're bailing on the people following you to go off. This is like the third time they're like, "Where's Basil?" It really honestly reminds me of Poochie from the old Simpsons gag of, you know what? We should make a really cool dog character, and everything should be about Basil. And when Basil's not on screen, I want everybody to say, "Hey, where's Basil?" I want him to go back to his own planet.
In terms of detecting danger, Osha did that this episode, that she could detect where the bugs were in the trees. They all just saw the Jedi.
The bugs!
Yes, the bugs, the ultimate saber/threat of the episode. But on things I did like, because I need to address at least some of those before we get to everything else. Yord, the actor who was playing him, his acting when they ran away from the weird Darth Gimp of a Jedi, of a Sith that we get in this, because dear God, that is just the Gimp from Pulp Fiction crossed with Kylo Ren. It's what they went with this. It's Kylo Ren's outfit, and then they put a zipper smile on it. It's what they did.
I did wonder if the mouth was going to open, and I'm glad it didn't, but it looked like it might have. And apparently they're selling like a prop for it, and the prop for it looks like the monsters from Spacecraft, like with the two weird jaws coming out the front. It's very strange.
If they're selling a prop for it, please tell me it's already being sold at Hot Topic, because that's the only place it'll fit.
The mouth that opened, that would have been weird for sure.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. That would have been the deal breaker right there if the mouth opened.
Yeah.
But
okay, I'm now imagining a Sith Lord.
Basil would have yelled.
Just blah, 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 blah.
Cut to Basil. He screams.
If the mouth had opened, it would have been something like the Nightmare Before Christmas. It would have been like puppetry kind of effect if the mouth had opened.
Yeah, that would have been a good effect. That would have been in line with the budget for this show.
Okay, let me return to the thing I liked. We keep getting distracted from the thing I liked. Yord. His acting...
We all like Yord. He's got abs for days.
There are a lot of shirtless scenes in this show now that I think about it. There really are.
For it.
Fan service. People love it. But his confusion, his fear, his inability to even stay fixed in the moment other than to assign himself a task and dedicate everything to it because otherwise the rest of the universe is falling apart about him, that was real. That was felt. I liked that quite a bit in terms of his tone of voice, his expression of, it doesn't make sense. He doesn't fight like he's in your head. That was really well done. Like Lee described, I liked it through the action scenes. The action scenes were fine. But the tension around the action scenes was actually really well executed, I thought, of seeing him deal with that, seeing Jackie come to terms with being confronted by forces that should be entirely outside of her ability and have to rise to the occasion of them, of acting independently and summoning her abilities for it. And legitimately, it seems, giving a Sith Lord, or whatever rank we want to assign this guy, a proper fight as part of fulfilling duties and getting a compliment from him before he kills her. You can debate whether he's toying with her or not, but he seemed like he went in for the kill to start. She held him off, and then he takes the opportunity to say, this girl knows her shit. You could learn something. And then he goes into a full-on fight with her later where you can debate whether he's having fun with it. But that stuff was good. I thought the actress who plays Jackie has just done very well for the role. And I thought this was their finest episode of her character who has done well with it. And then it was his best episode for, otherwise it's been rather lackluster, but it led to a more meaningful tension for that scene and also exit for them. I'm disappointed that the characters I was most into, either now or later, are gone, because otherwise I'm left with May/Dosha of where I don't know whether it's the actress or whether it's the writing, but they are the most wooden addition of this show to me. And this episode did not help. And Saul, he's a fine actor, and he's a quintessential Jedi at a show that has made the Jedi the most boring as white bread toast. But they're not giving him much to work with in a way that I'm hoping, from where they set up this episode, next episode may be the culmination of a lot of buildup, which hasn't been that exciting, but could have a good payoff for it.
Okay, so Saul is the next before Jimmy jumps in, I think we should say the actors' names. You're doing a lot of.
I don't
the actor
remember
who plays,
any of them.
Lee Jung-jae plays Soul, and Daphne
like him in
Keane.
Squid Game.
Yeah, he's definitely like hot right now, and also like seen as a more elite cast member for the show. And then Daphne Keane plays Jackie, the greatest Padawan of all time.
Terry, she gets promoted in death.
You said you didn't care about anybody dying. I know how sad you must have been when she died. She was your favorite. I know how you love it when there's just a genius child. She's basically Padawan Hermione Granger. I mean, she's Padawan Hermione Granger. Let's just be honest. And if you like that or if you don't, she can just be kind of vaguely perfect and smarter than she has any right to be.
I mean, that was one of my frustrations with Harry Potter, was that I felt like Hermione should have been the protagonist and the hero of the story because she was the most capable person I was following. My big problem with Jackie is that it seems like she's overpowered for the position. So they should have already made her a Jedi Knight, especially if Soul's going to feel comfortable enough having her fight alongside him against what appears to be at least a very powerful dark side user. They don't know it's Sith at that point, but I actually felt like when he retorts back to Soul, like, well, you brought her here. That was one of the better lines I felt like of the whole thing, because it was befuddling to me that Soul would allow Padawan to pull a lightsaber out and engage in this type of combat, except for the fact maybe that he knows that she's the greatest Padawan of all time, who has the answers to everything.
Because Anakin, the Padawan who we know the most about, never pulled out a lightsaber or fought or went off on his own to do things while a Padawan. We're used to Padawans not getting to do things and being really good at that stuff.
Well, when did he become a Jedi Knight, like compared to when he was doing a lot of that stuff?
Sometime,
you tell me.
Sometime between 1 and 2.
Right. Yeah. So he was a Jedi Knight. Yeah.
Oh, he's still called a Padawan, but that's like my old master because he's not actually a Padawan anymore.
He's a Jedi Knight by 2, right? So she's a Padawan. She's not a Jedi Knight yet because of and you know that because of the difference between her and Yord. Like they're clearly at different levels, and Yord is a Jedi Knight, not Jedi Master.
That does bring up. I'm not sure why she's here. Then actually, that is a good question. I no longer understand. I thought Padawans got to do stuff like that.
I feel like part of the point of the show is to be a condemnation of the Jedi and the concepts that are associated with them. And one of the things the show has been hitting hard is child soldiery and child indoctrination. And that's something that the show deems completely unforgivable and is assigning it as a fundamental sin of the Jedi. And so the bad guy bringing that up was meant to be, you're the one who brought a child to war, and now look what your actions have brought about. Now, to which if I'm Saul, I'm going to say, sir, you just murdered her. I just brought her on a field trip. What the fuck? This is not a false. This is a false equivalence right now. It's a big sin within the context of the show, because the show seems to be heading towards the idea, and it's part of this is we know the Jedi committed some sins. It's part of the background. We know we're going to realize additional sins that Saul committed. But the show wants to take a bit of the air out of the Jedi and portray them as being bad guys or a problem or inept or corrupt or whatever else. And that felt like I was in furtherance of some of the ones they've already set up. Incidentally, I hate, but sure.
When you did say that, I almost expected him to say it's like, buddy, Saul, bragging about her being a child when you're turned her into a soldier don't brag about raising child soldiers. That's not a good look, Saul.
Right. The language back from the guy was imprecise because he said, you brought her here. So to Spencer's point, yeah, he just brought her. He had no idea they were going to get in a lightsaber fight. So he just brought her to this planet.
They were attacking somebody who killed 2 Jedi Knights. They knew they were going to arrest a armed and dangerous murderer.
The bigger deal for me is that when there was a lightsaber fight happening, he allowed her to join in on the fighting. He didn't tell her, get the fuck back. Like you shouldn't be fighting here. Like that was the disconnect for me.
I actually love that part because I that part I have an answer for. She did not join in the melee and the scrum when everybody was charging him.
She went after.
We didn't see it, but the fact that she was basically watching the back door, that either she just knew to do that because that's her job, or she was told, go watch the back. You know, be the lookout. You probably won't have to fight. If somebody comes out the back, you know, stop them. But you know, you go to the safe position of lookout. And then when
the Sith
May
attacks
out,
her.
Right. The May comes out and then she tries to arrest her because, well, all the actually like deadly fighting's happening over there, and I'm the only one who can stop you. So we're gonna do that now. So she got pulled into it. She was not. They tried to put her in the safe place, and she got pulled back. And she was just so perfect at everything that she was able to do both jobs.
And that would work. That would work perfectly if we didn't get a subsequent scene where she had been fighting the guy and was blown back. Soul was there next to them, and they both attacked together. Like there was a moment where Soul could have told her, okay, that's enough. Thank you for the help here. You can bolt. Instead, he fights alongside her. That's the
that would have been dumb at that point. Because, okay, clearly they're still probably going to lose because he just beat six of them.
We're like 8 Jedi have died at this point. Yes.
But
Stormtrooper Jedi.
His odds of winning one-on-one, low. And if he dies, like the odds that this person could probably beat Jackie back to the ship, pretty high. So you got to try to like get every advantage you can once you're in that situation. I think that does make sense of, look, we're currently in a fight. I'm not going to split my attention to tell my one ally to not help me.
Well, he did say, hey, you leave with the prisoner here. You leave with the civilian.
Like he got injured and the civilian had to get back and wasn't going to do it on her own. So that was a little different. Also, it was like a pause in the action rather than mid-fight telling somebody to leave.
I think fundamentally, and this came out in our Phantom recording, and I think it's coming out now, we just have a different perception of what the role of Padawan is. My understanding is the Padawan is a young child still learning, is not to be involved in operations, certainly not in any violence, and they have a responsibility to protect them as much as they do anything else. And so it would seem to me that one of the responsibilities that Soul had in that situation was to ensure that Jackie didn't die, not to protect himself, not to say, hey, Jackie, you fight alongside me, that way I can survive. Now, to your point, maybe he's gamed out that if he dies, she has no chance. Maybe. I can't, that's fair. But I would have liked to seen him say, hey, you get the fuck back. But it also blends into the fact that Jackie was a really good fighter. Also blends into the fact that every time somebody was confused in the show, Jackie had the answer. Like she's even advising Soul in like episode 2 or whatever it is. So it's like
she was carrying Yord from the beginning.
All along the way, this has been an overpowered Padawan, and then she actually gets pushed into this position where the role of Padawan is confusing to me in this show.
So I'm going to agree with both of you. First, I want to say I do agree. I don't know why she's there with that idea of Padawan are like one step up from younglings and are not supposed to be going out on deadly missions, because they knew this was going to be a dangerous mission. And if another one of my things, why did they go back to Coruscant last episode? If they had just gone straight there and met the tracker, that would be a good explanation and story of why Jackie is there.
Unprepared. They're just going with emotions. Time's of the essence.
They could have even said, like, stay at the ship. It's like, you want me to stay alone on this planet where there's a murderer? And it's like, oh, fine, come with us.
Yeah,
like that,
close the door.
Right. Like, well, yes, you could have, but
you can't close the door in Star Wars. This is a thing, apparently.
No, but all you need is an astromech droid. They all have lockpicks for every single lock in the world. But they went back to Coruscant. That could have been to drop her off. That would have made more sense, actually, as a reason to go back. If she can't go to a random murderer planet. So I do agree. I don't know why she's there.
Yeah.
So question. When Darth Maul hopped off of his Vespa, didn't Qui-Gon say, hey, Obi-Wan, you get back in the ship, like I'll handle this? And like then Obi-Wan essentially fought from the ship, or at least used the ship to help get Qui-Gon out of there. But Qui-Gon totally threw himself in front of a Jedi Knight, in front of a Sith, and said, I'll handle this.
He says, Anakin, run, and he says, Obi-Wan, take off. So yeah, he's like, I'll handle this, but we're this is our exit plan. Both of you do those things.
I didn't
Makes more
take that
sense
as
to
much
me.
as like I'm protecting my Padawan, and a little bit more of the princess is on there, the kid who's on there. Like, if if I can buy you time, that's better than us all being caught. Like, everybody who's most important is on the ship. Hopefully you can come back and get me, but if not, then I'll buy you time.
You're
Not
right. It's not.
I have
Yeah.
to protect my child, my junior
Yeah,
ranger.
It's not perfectly analogous, but I do think there's some precedent for the Jedi Master does what they can to protect the people under them that they're training. Sorry, go ahead, Spencer.
Yeah, in terms of how I would like this better, they don't go to Coruscant because that was a needless fucking waste of time that just made for an episode that just didn't need to happen. It's just Saul, Yord, and Jackie. They go to the planet. They don't get the annoying little tracker creature because why? And it's just them actually getting character development going through the forest together, so we get to spend some more time with them. They confront the Sith. Saul says, Jackie, get Osha back to the ship and out, because now they're adjusting. Saul and Yord fight the guy. Jackie eventually has to come back, and it's just that three rather than the needless extra Jedi that serve no purpose other than to die, and the needless and we focus on the characters that actually matter to make their deaths more powerful. Yes.
Interesting. I read a interview with some of the showrunners and some of the actors now, like after that last episode, because some of them are really eager to talk about it, especially Darth Jason. He was saying, I've been lying.
I'm looking up the name of the character
for 2 years. What's that?
I'm looking up the name of the fucking character because none of us can remember who this guy is.
Darth Bortles is his online name, because
I'm calling him Darth Skimp until otherwise.
Jason Mendoza from Jacksonville, Florida. He was saying how he's had to lie to his friends and family for 2 years and say, no, I'm not a Jedi or a Sith, because he, real tight NDAs.
Reveal.
You can't let those kind of leaks out sideways to your friends and family. So he's excited to talk about it all.
Not when the storytelling's this tight.
Lee, I'm just saying. Okay, one thing was
Kimir, Qimir.
Yord's acting here, yeah, they knew how good it was. They knew how shook he was and how he defaulted into the follow the rules thing, because nothing was happening the way it's supposed to. People are dying. There's a lightsaber user fighting us, not ways that are being done. And I've been given an order, so I know what to do. And he was sticking to that, regardless of what she said, until Jackie's going to die. He still has attachments and emotions, and that's not a bad thing, but that does throw him off his game a little bit because he's not used to dealing with those. His training is that those are kind of bad things. So then he's handling having to go back because of attachments and emotions and caring and breaking the rules. And he's kind of off his game a little bit because now he's being pulled in multiple directions and really doesn't know what to do. So I did love it. And I think he knew how good he did there, or everybody does, because it's pretty obvious well done. He did well. They were saying one of the reasons to include the large group is, well, for one thing, I liked this primarily not because of the lightsaber fighting, but the lightsaber fighting was really good, like notably good. Choreography was fun. It was interesting. I want to hear from Spencer about his helmet and glove, and that was just cool. And I didn't know there was something I could
Cortosis.
do that. Gazoon type. But I am loving what they did. They basically said, by letting all the red shirts die and all the named characters keep living, it actually lets the audience fall into a little bit of comfort zone of, okay, the red shirts, nameless group they brought, those all died. All the named characters are still alive, so the named character is going to live. Oh no, wait, one of the named characters died. Oh no, wait, another named character died. So that those hit harder because you have already kind of expected none of the named characters to die, and so that shock hits a little harder, which you can say whether you like that kind of a shock or not, but I think it was effective. I was very surprised by both. Though I was very amused at the way the way they both died. I was amused that, like me, Yord's hair was just so tussable. Just want to reach over and tussle his hair, really, really mess it up, and he just did a little too hard. Oops.
Oh God, did he play with the bunny too hard? Was that what happened?
Kind of.
He rubbed the rabbit too hard.
And with Jackie, the fact, she was clearly doing well. You could say she's too good to be a Padawan with the lightsabering, and I actually want to talk a little bit more about the lightsabering in general. But she was doing well. He was fighting and clearly was trying. She got in like a kick on him. But here's something I realized. Who has he ever gotten to lightsaber fight against? Probably nobody, or very, very few, because we're not aware. They haven't even said, oh, Jedi have been dying mysteriously with lightsaber burns all over the place. Who is he getting to do this against?
And an implied history with Saul that's not clearly explained, but we can theorize it about.
But not often. And so he
Yeah.
clearly has his own twisted sense of humor and enjoyment, and he likes toying with people, and he likes having his own kind of fun. I think he was toying with her is the wrong word. I don't think that he was letting her get a kick in or something, but she was good enough that he was enjoying the fight, I think, and he was letting the fight continue until she got one lucky move in too much and took his mask off, at which point, boom, 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 not just stabbing with a lightsaber.
Prison
shank.
From
Ahsoka, you can totally survive one shanking with a lightsaber through a vital organ,
Disney
but
Star Wars,
three is no good. So the moment that he was not having fun, it's over. And I think that shows that he was enjoying himself, not bringing his full force to bear. And I don't think it's that she had a chance of beating him, but she was at least only one ballpark away from his ballpark of skill.
This is my line. They explain it in the show that part of the reason he defeats other people is because he has a style and psychic abilities they've not encountered before. And also he's got just a physical object, his Cortosis helmet, which those aren't familiar. Cortosis is a kind of brittle material, maybe metal, from the Legends universe, which is famously either Star Wars lightsaber resistant or even lightsaber shorting out, depending on the medium. The main thing I originally remember it from is Star Wars Jedi Outcast, of where it's more lightsaber resistant in terms of blocks the ability of a blade to go through it. Other things have gone that it actually can short out a blade inconsistently or temporarily, but it is an anti-lightsaber kind of material that's very rare, but has existed at various times in the Legends universe. They appear to have made it canon again in some shape or form when it comes to this guy's helmet. That's another key part of how he's able to succeed. The problem with how many people he fights at the same time and how many people he kills is that it's too hyperbolic for me. The purpose is he's good, he's dangerous, he's more powerful than our characters, and we want to show that. But they showed it to such a degree, it's more like Greek myth, of where it's not that, oh, he held off 4 people, it's that he held off 400 and he called the powers of the gods and he held them off. It's like, I'm losing track of this guy almost being somebody I can take seriously when he is that much better than everyone. So I thought the addition of the extra Jedi actually took me out of it a little bit, just because it became more stylized than something I can take as a grounded enough, it's fantasy of course, but grounded enough for me to care about the character drama.
How many swordsmen do you think Aragorn could fight and win against?
Depends what kind of swordsman. If they Jedi trained knights with fellow Force abilities and recognizable talent against a guy you just said has no explained basis to have any training or experience.
How many knights of any country in Fellowship of the Ring do you think Aragorn could beat at once?
That is firmly within the aspect of meant to be classic epic fantasy, which is actually closer to the idea of myth, and that's the entire point of Tolkien, to do an aspect of drawing from myth. So it's not a proper equivalence, because this shows very much trying to remove aspects of the myth, take down the Jedi, move away from some of the tropes of Star Wars, and be more grounded. So
you've got a magical sniffing otter friend. I don't think that we're that grounded.
Not magical. He's an alien.
Basil,
he's actually closer to the ground, so I think he's more grounded.
Okay. And he's charming.
So on that, I would say they said they wanted not just to say that he's big and bad or introduce somebody fake for him to fight against just to show he's big and bad, but to actually show against the real characters that he is that big and bad. So it was at least intentional. I hear you say they overdid it. I don't think they overdid it. Yeah. Here's why. For one big reason and then one small reason. The small reason is he was expecting this. He's in his element. He has the element of surprise in general. He has the element of surprise of they probably don't know his helmet can do that. And so all of their tactics are just not working because they're trying to go for every kill shot, and every single kill shot is actually him disarming them over and over again, which is hilarious. It's like almost Benny Hill, except serious, and I loved it.
Several characters get their lightsabers knocked out, know it's in effect, and then go back into battle with him and only die afterwards. So the helmet only works for so long as a surprise tactic.
But their tactics they don't learn new lightsaber tactics. Their tactics, when it's go for the kill, like the head's one of the regions you swing at, and he's moving his head to block them. They're not used to there being.
He is headstrong, yes.
So, and I read a comment, and I don't, Spencer, you may be able to tell me that I'm wrong about this in the lore, but
go on.
I read a theory that the Jedi learn lightsaber fighting, but they never expect ever to actually be fighting against another person with a lightsaber. They have it for,
depends on the
symbol.
era, but sure.
During this era, there are, as far as they know, no Sith that exist. So they would be learning the forms and techniques to block and reflect blaster fire, and they'd be learning the rest of them basically as sparring. It's fencing. They learned fencing. They are a fencing club as a meditation and as a discipline and as a little bit of self-defense, but they never expected to actually fight against anyone who could block their blows. And they have now found one. Of course, all the things they ever actually have used against a person aren't going to work here. So they're having to rely on their practice sparring for fun techniques exclusively. He has been planning for this. They've probably never, ever been in a life and death thing with somebody who had a lightsaber.
Two things with that. One thing I do like, and I'm with you on the idea that, and I've always preferred this aspect rather than the line from Obi-Wan about your lightsaber is your life, or some shit like that in the prequels, is that lightsaber combat is just like for, like, say, monastery monks training in a tower. It's an aspect of learning discipline. It's a skill they learn as part of their overall art, rather than the basis of who they are. They are called knights, but it's more accurate to view them as almost like a monastic order. The Jedi Order, of which Jedi Knight can be a category of that is learning various traits as part of mastering and better understanding the Force. And the lightsaber is a tool in that regard rather than the basis of their being, the way so much of Star Wars media since the prequels is focused on. With that, like that. Problem I would say with yours is that there's no reason that we've gotten yet, they may later, that this guy would have any more experience using a lightsaber in lightsaber combat.
No. Here's the thing.
And fighting against other people with lightsabers. We've gotten nothing to suggest yet that he's fought against other Jedi or had experience fighting in lightsaber combat.
I thought about
but prepared how against fighting against lightsabers? That's a very specific thing.
Well, not really. Because here's the thing. He knew that he was going to go up against people with lightsabers. And he knew he was going to use a lightsaber. What is a lightsaber fight like? Normal sword fighting. All he had to go to was any planet that used swords against each other. Just normal people with swords.
And he
could just
cuts
have normal
through them.
sword training. Well, but it doesn't go. If it goes through them, you've won. Like, that's the success.
But the lightsabers itself, don't.
The fight itself is exactly the same until you win or lose. So he was training, intending to have people who could block his swords, and he could just go train on any sword fighting world in the whole galaxy. They were never ever expecting their life and death slices to ever be blocked. So completely different. They were saying he's not doing anything like he's supposed to. Well, that's because you're a fencing club, and you didn't. You're a fencing club, or you're blocking blasters, or you're like killing people who can't defend against you at all. Like, that's all yours.
They should be doing.
Was.
The only things we know that resist lightsabers are Beskar, which has been so overdone now because of the Mandalorian, and Cortosis, which we just did now. We've been reintroduced into the canon. So it's not like he could spar with anybody. His lightsaber would go through
normal
any
sword.
object.
No. Him with a normal sword, them with a normal sword.
Just practical sword fighting.
That's what I meant. He could just go be a sword fighter on any sword fighter world. He wouldn't be showing off his lightsaber to anybody. Practicing normal sword fighting, right? With sticks. Go to anybody who uses normal swords, but who are intending to use them to the death, and you'd be getting your lightsaber skills down.
As is so much the case with this show, and as I've said repeatedly, I understand exactly what they were going for. I like aspects of it on paper. The execution is coarse and poorly done, in my view, in terms of putting those bits together. And I feel like that carries through for so much of where the show is, of where I get the theme, I get the direction, I get what you want to accomplish, you just haven't done it as well as you could have.
The execution was actually the sharpest part, because lung, spinal column, that was the sharpest moment of the whole thing, was the execution of Jackie.
Lee, you said something?
No.
Your hand raised for a second.
The only thing I was going to say is I just want to log for the official record my disagreement with Spencer that so much of Star Wars media has hyped up the relationship between the Jedi and the lightsaber. I heard one line from Obi-Wan to Anakin, who was already an undisciplined person he was trying to teach discipline to. You characterized it as all of that media focuses on it continually. That's not been my read.
And then they made Yoda into a spinning Tasmanian devil with a lightsaber, the way we've talked about before. And then in all the Clone Wars, we barely see people use their Force powers. They just go head in with a lightsaber so we can have lightsaber fights as fast as possible. I think they've decided that since lightsaber fights are entertaining, they almost ignored that Jedi have Force powers. But I did like it sometimes that Jedi were actually trying to use Force powers on each other, including the effectively gnarly move of the Sith pulling 2 Jedi onto his existing sword after he's impaled one, which I hadn't seen that before.
Yoda participating in a lightsaber fight is not the same thing as Jedi now believe that the lightsaber is your life. Like, that was one line, you've extrapolated it. It's okay that you've extrapolated it, but I disagree that all of the media that we've gotten in the last 20 years from Star Wars illustrates that. That's all. It's my official log for the record.
Yeah, I'm with Lee on this. Even the line about it is your life, I did not think of it as your entire life should be about this and you should go to sleep cuddling it. I thought it was, this is how you defend yourself against blaster bolts. If you don't have this within arm's reach, you're dead meat. That's how I took it.
You know how you defend yourself against blaster bolts? You use your damned Force powers to pull their guns out of your hands, or to move quickly, or to knock them like rag dolls around the room. I feel like maybe it's because of budget, maybe it's just a practicality, but they ignore the idea of a Jedi Master being in command of the Force to instead say they're really good with the lightsaber, and that says they're good.
I have a question.
Yes.
Don't they, like, so I had this thought at the end of Day, where the episode Day, where he just force pushes all of them.
The last one, right?
Right. And then we cut, and now he's fighting them. I think that, like, a very basic read of that could have been like, why don't you just keep force pushing them? Don't they have to be very careful about the ability to force push, force grab, force pull, like all that stuff? They could overpower the cannon very, very quickly with that. So I think they've had to be careful about how much they use it. It's cool that it's been introduced. It's some fun effects. Like when Luke grabs the lightsaber in the Wampa cave, that's like one of the coolest moments in all of Star Wars. So it has some great moments. But I do think, like a lot of fantasy media that has these types of things in it that are almost like danger zones for the people telling the plot, like you can't use too much of that.
I would agree, but one of the best elements for me in Empire Strikes Back is when Vader stops toying with Luke and trying to fight him with a lightsaber and just shows the fact, no, I'm more powerful in the Force, I'm going to now overpower you, and just throws the entirety of Cloud City at him. It can be used effectively. I agree with you. It can't become superpowers. It can't go that far because you lose any degree of tension, and you're always asking, why don't you use the powers? But it can be useful in a way that I think it could be better depicted and worked in a lot of the Star Wars material we've done, rather than just immediately defaulting to sword fight, sword fight, sword fight, sword fight.
Fair enough.
What do we think about the saddest of sad boys as our Sith? Because, man, he was reading off of a journal that's been left on a particular high school drama class in terms of a lot of lines we get out of him.
No, Darth
The Jedi won't let me be what I want to be. Yes. I can't be what I want to accomplish. Yes. I just want to have an apprentice. They're not letting me live my life.
Yes.
And what was that utter nonsensical line at the end of this thing?
Okay, that one was gibberish. I'm with you on that one.
Let me repeat it, because it's so delightful gibberish. What extraordinary beings we are. What extraordinary beings we are. Even in the revelation of our triumph, you see the depth of our despair. It sounds like he pulled it from a goth music video. It's just like he's just quoting his favorite band lyrics kind of thing. But I get what they're going with for it. It's again part of feeding into the narrative that the Jedi being an oppressive force, that they're trying to control oppressive force. An oppressive force upon the Force. They're trying to control who can practice it. They eliminate who that don't. They brought in the similarity between the idea of Yord saying, he's in your heads, and Osha says, oh, like the powers my mom could do. She could get in Jedi's heads. As maybe even going into why the idea of the Jedi clearly, in some reason, for some way, murdered the entire Coven. So they're factoring in the idea that the Jedi are a conservative, controlling force that doesn't let individuals be, and the only way you can be truly free is to, despite the tenets of an organization which self-preserve peace and compassion and protection of the galaxy for thousands, or in the Disney canon, hundreds of years, the only way you can truly succeed as a person is by abandoning those conservative, controlling bastards and going off in your own life. This is in furtherance of that, and a lot of you was saying was into that, but it came across as just the saddest of sad boy goth stuff.
So I do actually accept that if you wanted to have a moral of Star Wars, it's that the dark side is a slippery slope, but being self-righteous and certain of your own correctness is also bad, and a balance is important. I
Sure.
feel like that's actually the thing. So
sound advice. I would just love if the Jedi weren't portrayed as only that.
well, you said Soul was basically everything a Jedi should be, and you're bored of him. So look, you got your quintessential Jedi, you got Qui-Gon Jinn, and you think Qui-Gon Jinn sucks. I have you on the record of saying Qui-Gon Jinn sucks, Spencer.
No, Qui-Gon Jinn was actually great. I've literally never said that about Qui-Gon.
No, but he's
and
the
you
quintessential
upset.
Jedi, just like Soul.
I loved all the Jedi that were. I loved a lot of the Jedi that were in the prequels. I loved all the Jedi that were in the original, all 3 of them. I'll count Sith too. But the fact that you're portraying a Jedi as quintessential Soul, the key thing they're teasing into, I'll speak from the narrative. They're teasing into the idea that Soul is not what he seems, and that's going to be the big reveal in the next episode of what crimes he's committed, what violations he's occurred. Half the taunting from the Sith this episode is, "Oh, a Jedi wouldn't do that." He's trying to tease out to Osha and May that Soul's got more going on than he actually is. But also just your narrative. They just suck in portraying the values of the Jedi and someone making them interesting. That's not a problem of the Jedi. That sucks how you're just putting them on the screen.
So the actor who said Soul in the interview that I read, he was basically saying how Soul is dealing with clearly something we don't know about, but some guilt. And the sentence he said, which I think is going to stick with me, like, he used slightly different words because I'm not good at remembering exact lines. But the actor said, like, at what price peace? Like, how much do you sacrifice for peace? Because there needs to be an answer to that question. There's some amount you would and some amount you shouldn't. And that's kind of what Soul is wrestling with, which I think is interesting. And we'll see if they carry through. You were talking like a hot topic. I loved every single thing about his exchange because he is different than the other Sith we've had. He seemed like he was toying with them and manipulating them in a way that, honestly, the only successfully manipulative Sith that I can think of is Palpatine, and he is his own thing. For every single thing you say about the Sith, you kind of say, except Palpatine, because he was specialer than the others.
I Am Your Father was a hell of a mind break. That was a successful bit of manipulation and control there too.
We can go through. That is the worst, actually. No, it was fun for the audience. In character, though, I'm Your Father was the stupidest thing. Come Rule the Galaxy with Me was there was zero chance of that winning Luke over. He wants family, but he's mad at you for taking away his family, and he doesn't want power, saying, hey, I've lied to you all along, and your father's actually evil, and you can rule the galaxy with the power you didn't want. There was no chance of that working. That was bad manipulation. That was clumsy, as if like his hands were made of bad robotics, and he just fumbled his son. Poor manipulative efforts there. The Emperor did better manipulative efforts with Luke, even though it still didn't work out.
4 years.
What do you mean?
I'm kind of including the prequels in terms of his manipulation. Luke was only one data point in a longer narrative of Palpatine manipulation.
I was just saying who tried to manipulate Luke and did a good job and a bad job. Darth Vader did not do a good job trying to manipulate Luke. He tried and failed miserably. And Emperor interacted with him even less, but had a better chance. He knew actually what he was doing with a person.
In fairness, cut off his hand, beat the shit out of him with random bits of Cloud City, knocked him off a cliff. Then at the last scene they're communicating with each other, he calls him dad, calls him father, and then immediately reflects on exactly what he just told him of, Obi-Wan, why did you lie to me? It hit.
But it was never going to succeed. It shook him off his game. If you wanted to win and kill him and distract him, good manipulation. If you wanted him to join the dark side and to join you in the dark side, zero chance of that working. Best chance, he's now on the dark side, but he's so mad at you, he's going to kill you first, like, Ben Solo style. That's a whole different TV show, movie content
thing.
Let's get back to Darth Bortles. I loved his manipulation. I mean, it seemed so snarky. I mean, and it was snarky. I love seeing Sith who can have emotions and interactions and seem to be having fun and have some snark. It was evil and it was cold and it was kind of enjoyable. Him like, the Padawan calling it instead of her, and not very Jedi of you. Like, you could almost roll your eyes at those, but they worked. They were effective. He knows Soul well enough through maybe a past history, maybe he's just insightful. Maybe he is effectively manipulative. He basically talked the guy into not executing him because that wouldn't be very Jedi. That's not very punk rock of you, my man, killing me with my back's turned. You should let me pick up my lightsaber and murder more people first. And it worked. Like, and Soul's
because the Jedi are all morons.
Well,
it's real dumb.
Well, I mean,
you don't have to give him his satyr back. Take him prisoner. Real dumb. Real dumb.
That was dumb, but look, Soul is really off his game. He's just seen a bunch of people die. He's being called up on, hey, are you really living up the Jedi Code? As he's surrounded by the reminders of the one time he did not live up to the Jedi Code. I accept it, even if I don't like it, but I accept it. What I love is just how effective the manipulation was, and it seemed calculated, and it was clever, and it was fun. I love everything about Darth Bortles. He's great. The mask is weird, but everything else is great.
Mask is real. The mask is
weird.
I'm getting annoyed at that their standard motifs now for Sith, of where they need to have a weird Darth Vader, Kylo Ren kind of mask, also with zipper, and they also have to speak in a broken, distorted voice.
Maybe my favorite part. One of my favorite part of the sequels was take off that stupid mask. You look like an idiot. That was great.
Agreed.
Whatever. Those are basically incidental. I feel like, again, on paper and as an act of manipulation, I like them. Maybe it was the line delivery or it's the lines in a vacuum, but the dialogue for a lot of those scenes did not hit me well, and it just came across as awkward. Manipulation, I'm with you. It's a key aspect of the character that is useful and has potential and is going into a lot of what's going to be the tension for Osha versus May now that they've switched places. But the actual lines and delivery of them, I was losing it pretty hard going through back episodes. Not helped by the fact that we get Osha and May reuniting, and those lines in particular were just bordering on non-human in terms of the lack of feeling I was getting with them.
Look, Spencer, you hate everything I love, and your soul is full of Oscar Grouches, like a whole army of them. I want to hear what Lee has to say, because I'm sure he's going to say that I'm actually, right, and everything's awesome.
Let's listen to Lee.
I think when people are advocating on behalf of a show, especially when in a detailed sort of breakdown like this, like we do, there's two different types of explanation. One's more effective for me than the other. So there's an explanation of, oh, they told the story this way because XYZ. And once that glass shatters and you understand that, then that plot's more interesting to you going forward. Or maybe you just didn't understand the plot, somebody shores it up, and then going forward, oh, I got it, I can understand that, and it helps the viewing. When you don't like a line of dialogue and someone explains, no, that line of dialogue did make sense because of blah, 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 they might be right, but that's not going to help you going forward, and you still didn't like it when you heard it, right? So you may be right, Jamie, but I think that the broader issue is that some of the dialogue's not landing for at least for Spencer and I, and apparently some people. And explaining, no, that dialogue did make sense. You could absolutely be right, but it doesn't change the viewing experience, and I'm not necessarily sure it helps it going forward. So yeah, that was what I was thinking about.
So Lee, that's very fair, but I want to ask you something, because I think we all agree that the movies. The 9 movies with TV shows, the 9 movies are the most canon. They're generally the high water mark. I'm also want to exclude Andor because Andor's just different. Like, I want to exclude Book of Boba Fett because Book of Boba Fett's just different. Look at the movies. Which of them didn't have bad, clunky dialogue that failed to land?
So, yeah. None of them. All of them had bad dialogue.
None of them.
I hate that defense, though.
This TV show is as good as the original trilogy. Lee has said so. I wrote it down.
But I hate that
dialogue
defense,
especially.
I hate that defense has now become mainstream of material that doesn't necessarily measure up in Star Wars, where no, it's been shit. It's like,
but it's not.
It hasn't.
It's the thing. No, here's the thing. The dialogue was always clunky, but we accepted it and it was fine, either because the rest of it's good enough or because we don't really care if dialogue's clunky, or it's not that bad, or we pretend it's not bad after hindsight. It's not that things have always been bad, so we should accept them as bad. It's that you loved them when they were bad, so why are they stopping you from loving it now? That's the legitimate question, I think.
A, I'm with you, the idea that dialogue can always be forgiven if the overall material goes into it. But B, there's a difference between something being cheesy or comic booky and fitting into those lines the way that Star Wars is always meant to be kind of Flash Gordon-y. It wasn't meant to be realistic. It was meant to be a certain element of fantasy and excitement and hero's adventure. That the dialogue lended into that. It wasn't bad. It just had a certain element of a bit of cheeseball associated with it, and that added to the fun. The lines were meant to be operatic, then they fit into that particular vibe. This isn't fitting that kind of vibe. It's just clunky. That's a difference in terms of overall experience. And I'm with you. How dialogue works is part of the medium it's operating in and the overall nature of the script and how the characters are interacting. This dialogue could be literally the same word from Star Wars, but how it's delivered and how the scenes are setting up make it not land.
So I'm wondering.
Something doesn't make sense to me though about the way that so this show clearly, if you listen to the showrunner, they want to break out of the mold of Star Wars. They want to live in the universe, but tell a different type of story a different way. But yet, there have been some things that have happened either in the show so far or in the trailer that fans have questioned. That the response from the show was, well, this was always in Star Wars, or this was always in the Legends canon. So I feel like you can't have it both ways. Like if the justification is, no, I put this in here, it's this way because Star Wars was always that way, then you can't then say I've rejected these other things that the fans like because I'm trying to do a brand new thing.
So I think I have a response for that, and I don't know if this will be satisfying, but in some ways they are getting away from it, and in some ways they have. I've talked about some people who have. I've seen lots of people who do like that. This is not just the ordinary Sith versus Jedi stories that we've heard before. It is different, whether or not it's
Sure.
Sith. It's not the Empire because it's a different time period. Is this kind of mystery storytelling, the idea of something which I have found out maybe I don't love, but the idea of each episode is not episodic and having its own arc. They're all just telling a bigger story, which is different. Like they have changed a lot of things from what other Star Wars are, but being grounded in the Star Wars universe is not just, well, we put Star Wars window dressing on a Dick Tracy episode. That was from Mandalorian season 3, where they just decided Jack Black would show up.
Which was very bad.
Okay, but they didn't do that.
Very bad.
They said no. Look,
it was the worst episode of Mandalorian.
That I think back to that episode a lot because I say I want other genres in Star Wars, and that's one example where they gave me a Law and Order episode.
You mean Andor?
I hated that because of how it's shoehorned in. Give me an entire season of Star Wars SVU, and I probably would love it. If it were just a whole season of that, I probably would.
Commit to it.
But this is something, maybe I just don't like this genre of mystery, but they did that, it's different. But they're keeping it by pulling in all this other stuff. And if you say clunky dialogue and melodramatic phrases shouldn't be in Star Wars, it's like, my man, that's part that the fact that they're having it, they can say that is one thing we didn't shy away from. Or using all these other things from Star Wars, I feel like you can have it both ways, because it's not that you are either all the way parroting Star Wars the way that Force Awakens was the exact same movie again, or we're doing something completely different that just has the word Star Wars on it. I think you want something in the middle with some new and some old, and I don't think you lose the right to point out what's recurring just because you say you're excited for bringing in new stuff.
Yeah, it's a fair point, and I like anytime you take a shot at The Force Awakens. So thank you for doing that for me. I enjoyed. I'll tell you this. I just don't. I recoil at the idea of this didn't work for me, and then someone goes, but it should have because it was in the original thing. Like I kind of recoil at that because it's possible that some things in the original movies didn't work for me too. Like, and I could still be a Star Wars fan, right? So simply mapping it back to the original series to me is not justification for it. But I would also say this, that I started this all out by saying that the reason I think this isn't working for me is the characters. I didn't say the script. I didn't say the writing, right? So yeah, we have quibbles with the writing, and I was just trying to point out that like the difference in bringing somebody along, a one-time instance of a line versus a forward-looking plot, like that's a little different how you bring somebody along in a show. But I didn't say that the writing is what has caused me not to want to continue to watch this. It's the lack of emotional investment that I feel. That's the primary thing for me.
And I think you guys have brought up the thing I like best about the series and the thing I like worst about the series in terms of what you discussed about what they're trying to do new. The thing I like best, because again, the character work has been rough and that ties into the thing I like worst, but the overall themes they're going into in terms of unpacking what is the public face, what is the private face, what is the purpose of order versus the purpose of chaos, and how that expresses in the forms of two twins separated but now changing roles. That can be interesting, and the mystery associated with that can be interesting. And it has gotten me along enough to want to find out what they want to do with that. And that's aspects of themes they've not fully explored in Star Wars before, and they're doing it in the way of these hybrid characters. That could be interesting. That is something new, and that is something I'm curious to see how they ultimately conclude that. I think going into the next episode, they've set up for what is going to be the most important episode of accomplishing that, and now finally switching the twins and setting them in the form of the two characters, which are manipulators, however you want to describe them, whatever else in the form of Saul and the Sith, the two representatives of the two different philosophies who have both manipulated them to their own ends, confessing their sins or confessing the plot. And them doing that to the wrong person could be really interestingly done and could be very interested in terms of how that brings to bear finally what they've been setting up. I'm in for that. I'm excited about that. That could be done really well, and I could be really interested in that. I'm worried from, again, a moving part standpoint, whether they can land that ship given what we've seen previously, but they've got the parts in place to do something unique enough to Star Wars that I've not seen before that I would be in for to see how that's accomplished. Jamie, though, hit one thing I think the show is failing on is the complete abandonment of episodic storytelling, of where this is a movie writ long with poor editing. This could be a 4-episode miniseries or a 3-hour film, and it would be better if it was, because this week-to-week format does not serve this show well. It leads to a lot of extra faff of going to planets they don't have to and plot lines they don't need to explore to fill content. It leads to other episodes that are unnecessarily short because they're not cut for television in that particular way. And other than this episode, no episode has ended on, in my mind, on a satisfying point, because it's not paced for television. That's point number one. Point number two, we're just going to be fun. Episodic storytelling, I feel like they've moved away from that because it doesn't prestige, doesn't tell a central narrative. But what it does give you is the opportunity for character growth. It forces your characters into scenarios where you get to see, show not tell, how they act, what they're confronted with, how their values are challenged, how they learn. It's not always forwarding the narrative, but it's getting you invested in it and getting you to learn the universe and getting to learn your characters with them. And this show, in my mind, would have been so better served if it either A, committed to a movie, or B, gave us some time to actually marinate with these people doing things other than the main plot, so that I would be in for them and I would understand them better, so I would find the decisions they make or the reveals we're going to get that much more significantly powerful in a way that I've not been allowed to have. These characters are basically no more characterized than the stage notes at the front of a play, because this is a play, rather than, in my mind, a successful television show in a way that a television show can uniquely be as a form of media. So, thing I like, they're doing different with the themes and philosophy and how that could eventually result. Thing I don't like, it's wasting its format as a television show.
All said. Jamie?
So I agree. I want to say I had said last episode that I was actually losing faith in the show, because last episode, Day, was boring. It ended at a place where it would make sense to end, sort of, but it was so short, so little happened, and for some reason 4 episodes in my head was how long until really something should be happening to get my attention.
It's usually the investment you ask of somebody. It's like, oh, watch 4 episodes and then say.
Right. So I was losing my faith. Like episode 1, 2, 3, I said, I don't want to prejudge this show, because this show, more than any other show I can think of, is clearly telling you, look, we're going somewhere and you're not going to know where until we get to the so you can't judge the show until we get to the end. And you can like that, you can not like that, but I accepted that. I've been saying, this could be a 2 out of 10 show or a 10 out of 10 show. Kind of depends on whether all this time they're making me invest pays off. At the end of the last episode, I said, I'm losing faith on the payoff. I think I lowered the ceiling. So now I wasn't saying it was definitely bad, but I think I said like 2 out of 10 to 6 out of 10. After this episode, it gave me payoff in a way that I liked. It gave me some progression of the master storytelling. So I renewed my faith that we were going to get somewhere, that I was going to happy that I was at. It was fun as we were watching it in a way that the other episodes weren't, because they weren't episodic. So I up mine. We're back, baby. Like, I'm back to, the show could be still anywhere from a 2 out of 10 to a 10 out of 10. But my optimism's back. They've bought me at least another episode of full optimism because I liked it. I do think you're right. The pacing is still the thing I dislike the most. And the characterization, I don't dislike who the characters are. I actually like how the actors and actresses are doing it, including May and Osha. But you're right. We haven't had the opportunity, because of the storytelling that they've chosen to do, how many episodes we've given them, what they've set, the task, like the plot line hasn't given me the buy-in on these characters that I would want. And that is a real downside. And I'm not telling anybody they're wrong for not connecting with the characters, because I like them, but I haven't really connected. I'm just still interested enough in them that I'm wanting to connect still. I do miss the episodic storytelling by a large thing. Like, look at some of the great shows that went for a long time, and some that had big overarching mysteries, X-Files or Firefly or Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Like, each episode was so fun because I think one of you guys said this before. You needed each episode to stand alone, because you were never watching 2 episodes in a row unless it was 10 years later and you bought the DVD. Right, you're going to watch 1 episode at a time, probably out of order. And reruns, it was a problem you had to do. You had to kind of introduce the characters so they all, the ones who did it poorly, rehashed the same things every episode and repeated themselves over and over again. The ones who did it well, though, just showed, no, we're going to show a different aspect of this character. So if you want to understand all of them, you'd want to watch all the episodes, but every episode is coherent and is about something, and you get to see them in their downtime. People make fun of Monster of the Week, and I'm not saying we should need to literally have a Monster of the Week, but having an arc for each episode is usually a good thing. I wonder how this, and I'd love to hear your opinion, Spencer, or yours, Lee, over how this show you think it'll play once it is bingeable and it's all out there. How it would work if they broke it up differently. Like, honestly, episodes 1 and 2 were released together. Kind of felt like one episode. Episodes 4 and 5, night and day. I heard it was even supposed to be one episode. And that would have been a good hour-long episode. Maybe you could have made it shorter, because now it's one episode. Maybe you could have cut the stupid go into Coruscant thing and have be one 45-minute episode. That would have been great. We would have been 3 episodes in, and I would have not lost my faith by the end of the 4th episode. That would have been amazing. Having it be a miniseries or a movie, or go the other direction and have it be a 30-episode season, where you have, now they have some, they lost their life support and they have an entire bottle episode on their ship where they're having to do something interesting on their ship. Could have been good. Didn't do it. What do you all think about that?
Lee, mind if I go first?
Go ahead.
One thing I've been thinking about is I actually like the idea of releasing 2 episodes at a time, because I think it would have fed into the narrative of, again, the Rashomon perspective, but also the twin effect that they've done with the story of the 2 different sisters. If you released 2 episodes at a time, think how interesting episode 3 would have been if it also had a parallel told from the perspective of May, released episode by episode you could watch at the same time. What if you did that throughout the season? If it's 2 episodes, night and day, the same way they set up here, of where you're getting either different perspectives or different completions of stories with the element of twisted perspective thrown in those and structured it that kind of way. That could have been a very interesting way of doing a non-episodic kind of storytelling, but you're getting the complete package over 2 episodes that are being released at the same time to understand the difference between the characters and how much perspective and philosophy you're bringing to a situation matter. And I think they could have structured the season that way in a way that would have been fascinating, while at the same time doing the overall presentation of the story the way they want it. Would require more material, different rewrites, or whatever else, but I think there's an opportunity that could have been done there, and episode 3 in my mind embodies that, of where they did 1 episode where 2, if anything, I think could have been more effective.
So
otherwise cut it down and just do a movie or a 4-episode miniseries, or instead give me some episodic storytelling with every 4 or 5 episodes hitting the main plot, so I get to understand your characters and why they are where they are.
Yeah, makes sense. I was looking up a couple of things before I gave this answer. So I've been saying that I felt like this would be a better bingeable show. I still think that. I think this will be a better show if you binge it than watching it week by week, because it's like we've talked about extensively. It's more like one long story that they've had to sort of split up arbitrarily. The question of like how they should have released it, that for me, that logically follows that it would be better if they just drop it all at once, like Netflix does, like Amazon will do with some things. However, I don't think that Disney is going to be willing to do that, and they probably would be frustrated at the storytelling that requires that, or at least pushes the viewer that way. Pretty famously, Disney has not done well financially with Disney Plus. Matter of fact, I think Bob Iger, Bob Iger's last major update to their shareholders, they said that the parks are recouping losses from Disney Plus, that they were too aggressive in their Disney Plus investments. It hasn't recouped. So something like this, where you're getting new Star Wars content, they want to get at least a few months of payment for people on the service out of the viewing of it. If you're a Star Wars only person, you're picking up Disney Plus only because there's new Star Wars content. They're not going to give it to you all at once. You can watch it in a day and then cancel the service. It needs to span at least over past a 4-week period. And this debuted on June 4th, right? So it's 8 episodes. That's going to be 6 weeks because they did the first one, twice, right? Or the first 2 episodes on week 1. So that goes 6 weeks to get the episode 8. That gets you into that second month. So now people there for the new Star Wars content have to pay for it for 2 months. So I think that does affect it. Something like Netflix is less of an issue because they pump out so much content that they have less people joining for one series. Whereas new Disney Plus content, they're a little bit more targeted, and there's a lot more, seemingly more people, their fandoms of particular aspects of the Disney product.
I think one of the problems they run into is that it's a problem that they want everything to be in the same box of where they want a particular product, of where they want everything they release to be prestige television. And in their mind, prestige television requires the water cooler effect, of where they want every episode to have a break so that people can talk about it, so they can build tension going into the next episode. And some of these shows just aren't that. They're not, or at least they're made worse by having to try to put them in that particular format. I'm with you that if this show is as it is, and this is what it wants to be, the way it would have worked best is 8 episodes at the same time, so that everyone could experience the entire mystery and go through it. Because otherwise, the mystery, which is the key tenet of all of this, is getting tired. This kind of delay associated with it, when a lot of the moving pieces seem so damn apparent of where they're ultimately going to go, it feels more like taunting than it does of a proper mystery at a certain point. Of where, God, I hope they reveal next episode. Because if they wait to reveal to like episode 8 this mystery, it is going to be more an endurance sport rather than a proper payoff in terms of overall experience. And that a lot of that could have been avoided if everything was just released at the same time.
Yeah, I'm optimistic going forward. I'm paraphrasing poorly, but something the showrunners were saying was that this shift almost into like the third act of the show, which I think is great, because you shouldn't have, I don't think, a mystery where the second half of the last episode is when you find out the truth. Usual Suspects is not the way most mysteries should happen, where the last 10 seconds is where you get the reveal.
Kaiser,
you should get the reveal more like episode 3, where you get the reveal of Palpatine, and then you still have like a half hour of them dealing with this, not just talking about their feelings, but like, okay, what happens next? What are they going to do with this? Let's actually see that lightsaber fight and get room to breathe. So I feel like, yes, I hope you're right, and I think you will be, because it sounds like they're considering this is now like the start of Act 3, so in a 3-act show kind of thing. So this is all supposed to go together and not just be a big change at the end. So I think that we're going to get some reveals in the next 1 or 2 episodes, and then you'll still have room for good resolution. One thing which I hope this doesn't count as a spoiler for anybody who wants to avoid spoilers, they have said, the showrunners, that they on purpose are making this show, because they don't currently know if there's going to be a season 2 of it, where it doesn't need a season 2. Like season 1 will wrap in a way intentional where it could just be 1 season and be done. And I'm sure many of them would love to keep doing the show, especially Jackie and Yord, but
the dead people.
Exactly.
Whose bodies are rotting in a forest because Saul decided to leave their corpses there behind for no apparent reason.
No, man, come on. You're going to go back. There's murderers behind you somewhere. They have to leave now. Come back with like an army.
They don't. They get on the ship and they take off, and they're never going to return. Their bones will bleach or be eaten by spiders.
Their bones are merely the shell for their spirit that is returning to the Force. And Jackie told you it's an honor to see somebody return to the Force. She is honoring you by letting you watch her die.
By letting her decompose in the dirt rather than bring her back to, her friends and her friends and members of the Jedi Order, like Luke dragging people through the Death Star, dragging Vader through the Death Star to give him a proper Viking funeral there at the end of Episode 3.
Look, I mean, can't you see on Saul's face? He's just looking around at all the dead Jedi and thinking, it's like a Mona Lisa. It's just so beautiful watching all these people rejoin the Force.
Spencer, I know that you wish the prequels hadn't been made, but they were. So that is Episode 6. I know, like your own.
Sorry, I meant
internal
1983. Sorry, yes.
What you really wish jumped out there, but they did make some.
Look, Freudian slip, but I honestly just misspoke. You're right.
Hey, look. The actual Episode 3 has taught us that if a Jedi is like a brother to you and dies in the elements, you leave his body there on a volcano slope. That's just what you do.
He was still molten. Even grabbing him would have been difficult, except, the Force could have pulled him up. The prequels have problems.
And he hadn't died yet, so,
He's still screaming.
Anakin. See
he was still screaming when I left him. Never makes the things better, my man.
I love how the Legends lore already told us that he fell into a molten pit. But the Legends lore was the two of them dueled. He fell into a molten pit. Obi-Wan totally thought he was dead and gone and couldn't even see him anymore and walked away. And then after he walks away, a force of pure anger arises from the pit. God, how much better would that have been than how they chose to depict it on the movie?
So Anakin was so mad. I mean... Look, if
embodiment of the Sith emerged, and Anakin in many ways died until he was reborn.
Spencer, this is a classic thing that is better in a book than it would be visually. Force of pure anger arose. Like this is how are you putting that on screen? That's a great thing for a book.
That was me paraphrasing. I don't remember the exact lines, but sure.
Look, if Padme can die of sadness, I feel like Anakin can force himself to move through sheer rage. I feel like these are okay things.
Let's wrap up. Anything else?
I think we can do that. Yeah, I feel like there's more to talk about, but I feel like this is probably enough.
I'm hopeful.
Good. Spencer has hope, love, and joy, and loves this show. I'm writing that down.
It feels dirty. I mean, Jamie, how do you live like this? Just having hope and dreams and imaginations for what a better future may bring? I don't like
blinders. No, blinders. I use a lot of blinders. You just don't think about the other stuff. That's fine.
Now I can't see. Everything is wonderful and blurry.
It's like a winter wonderland when you take your glasses off. Or like an 80s movie, which is or like Jag. I don't know why. Blurry. I think they put Vaseline on the lenses back in the day just to make everybody feel good.
Everyone's skin was perfect, and that's how they did it.
Just put Vaseline on your eyes. It'll be fine.
Oh, I think Again, they've got the parts in place to have a successful conclusion to this. It's had problems going into it, but the thing I found most interesting is what they've left to resolve. And they've cleared the board of all distractions from that. This next episode will, for me, and I think Jamie, you and I are on kind of the same page. This next episode can make or break the show. Of where if they successfully land the next episode from what they've got and what they've set up, I'll be in pretty hard for the last two episodes of the season thereafter. Because this is, I feel, what they've been building towards. This episode, in my mind, wasn't the true climax. This was the clearing of the board of everything that's not relevant to their actual story. And the next episode, in my mind, is the true climax of the show. And then it's more like the after effect ripples going forward thereafter. They may draw it out. I think it'd be a mistake if they do. But they've got the tools in place to have a very successful production from here. And I'm curious enough to find out whether they can do it.
I'm going to give my final thoughts, and then Jamie, you wrap us up. I would not keep watching this show if I wasn't doing the pod. I suspect it will binge better later. I suspect this will age better because it doesn't deserve a 17% or whatever it's got on Rotten Tomatoes. Like some of the craziness.
Mediocre.
Right, it's gotten too far. We've become
too
negative.
Boba Fett.
Come on, now. It's gotten too negative for the quality of the show. It's not that bad. I also would like to point out, I may not like it. Okay. If you're enjoying it, like in a lot of ways, I'm probably watching it wrong. I'm probably taking the wrong mindset. It's probably a product of my experience. Nope, I'm not done.
Yeah,
I'm not done.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, no to Jamie, you're good. Be happy with you.
Probably experience of my media intake, my experience with Star Wars, and where I'm at. Right, like if you're enjoying it, please enjoy it. I don't want to be one of those people online telling people that it sucks and they shouldn't enjoy it, because you should enjoy it. And if you're enjoying it,
stop having fun.
And I hope that's great. Spencer means that too. He's just cranky. Second podcast. We went back to back today. So that's how I feel about it. I will keep watching it. Jamie and I will be back next week to discuss the next episode. But yeah, that's how I feel. Jamie.
So I am, in all honesty, I'm not as excited about this as I have been about the other shows, by and large. Like, I want to be completely upfront about that. I think the pacing is hard. I think I might just not like the mystery storyline telling. I was starting to get bored last episode. I'm gushing about this one because I really did like it, and because I think that the show has great potential, and I have sought out to see why people love it, and I'm encouraged by hearing them say what they're enjoying about it. It's honestly kind of medium for me. It's overall could be a 2 out of 10, in which would put it below Book of Boba Fett. If it doesn't pay off by the end, I will put it below Book of Boba Fett.
Don't say things you don't mean. I mean, that them's fighting words by any definition to say something's worse than Book of Boba Fett.
But I am optimistic, and I think it could be 10 out of 10 on par with.
Unbelievable.
Well, okay. Yeah, no, it could be 10 out of 10, and just what style you're looking for, on par with any of the good ones, if it pays off enough. I bet it'll be somewhere in the middle, probably. But if you don't like it because of the pacing and things, the dialogue, the lack of character development, that's fair, honestly. I kind of share those concerns. Some of them do work for me. I love everything about Darth Jason. I actually love the twins and the actress and their dialogue. I love how they are wooden in ways that seem to make sense to me. And again, just because something makes sense for the character, it should also be fun. So if you're not enjoying them, that's fair. But the one being traumatized and alone and only now finding out she was lied to by her only friend, this makes sense on how she would react that way. And the one finding out, hey, my sister was dead the whole time, and maybe my only person I trusted has been lying to me all along, kind of makes sense she'd be acting this way. I like it. I'm very optimistic about it. I'm hopeful that it's going to be great. I want more bugs. I want less Basil. And as long as I get those two things, I'll be happy.
And what you least want of all would be low-speed Vespa chases.
As long as they're color-coded.
Not actually, we've joked about it before. It's not even the thing I like least about Book of Boba Fett, but it's just the one that stands out the most.
It is the silliest. You recently, when we were talking, pointed out and reminded me of the existence of the spin move from the Boba Rangers, Go Boba Rangers spin move, which I forgot that existed. It's very fun. No, I could imagine this being worse than Book of Boba Fett because they were getting close to me being bored. Book of Boba Fett, people were making dumb choices. I was irritated by a lot of the stuff in it, but I wasn't bored. I still cared what happened to the characters. And Lee, I think this is something you were saying, where the worst thing that could happen to a show, or maybe a Spencer, I don't care what happens to these people.
8 deadly words. Yeah, it's a trope about the utter death knell of the show is apathy.
Yeah, and that was never the case with Book of Boba Fett. If there's no payoff, then this will be worse than that for me, because they've asked a lot of investment and faith and time, and it's been borderline boring sometimes, and the pacing's been jarring. But they've set up things that they could do great payoff. The concepts, like Spencer said, the concepts are great, and I'm kind of still giving them full points for the concepts because I don't know how well they're going to execute, and they've set up something where you won't know until the end how well the execution is. The later episodes will make those first episodes either be more pointless or more quality in retrospect. And I'm interested in finding out.
And I will offer, again, my agreement with both of you. Your fun is your fun. How someone else appreciates a show or whatever else should not govern you. And whether you enjoy every Star Wars show should not determine whether you are a fan or not. If you like certain things, focus on those things. If you don't like other things, that's perfectly fine. It's a broad universe, and you finding your own particular ways that it expresses itself should be part of you deciding what, you best enjoy about media in general.
The best comment I got back when I was trying to ask around to see, like, why are you all enjoying this show so much that I'm struggling to like as much as I want to, was maybe this isn't for you. Maybe you don't like mysteries like this. Maybe you like episodic storytelling and don't like this. Or maybe, you don't like these characters or this dialogue. The idea that there's enough Star Wars media coming out that, Lee, you might have just skipped a show. Tell you that 10 years ago that you would skip a Star Wars live action show. Yeah. But maybe that's where we're getting, where there's just enough of them where they're giving me what I wanted, where there's a mystery show and there's a spy show and there's a Andor, which is different than Book of Boba Fett. And there will be some that are for me and some that aren't. And if it's not for me, fine. Maybe it's just not for me. And that's weird to think they may be putting out that much content. And it feels almost bad that I'd be so overloaded that I'd stop caring about all of it. But that's an embarrassment of riches. Like, we might hit the point soon where I don't want to do a podcast on every single episode show because some of them just aren't for me, and I'll wait for the next one. I don't know. That's a weird thought.
Do you want to start next week?
On the next show, sure. I bet it's called. Wait. Is there a new show starting next week? Because they never advertise Acolyte. I don't know what the next show is. Maybe it's coming out already.
And meanwhile, if they come out with Andor season 2, I'm in for watching every one of those episodes with you guys, whether you want me to or not.
Yeah, that's coming out, I think, later this year. So that's pretty exciting. All right, guys, thanks for joining. This was fun. Thanks for doing round 2 of this. Sorry to everybody that we a couple days late because we did record one, got lost to time, and now we've done this one. So we got this out. We'll be back next week, Jamie and I, for episode 6 of The Acolyte. Hope you all enjoy your week, and remember, a Jedi's life is its lightsaber.
You son of a bitch.